Merci, Carol. Thank you. Thanks.
So, good evening. Welcome to the Tibet Center. I'd like to not hide crochet. We'll do.
Move over the opposite way.
Okay. So, we'll start with a prayer for the spreading of the teachings throughout the length and breadth of the West. By the force of the blessing of the non-fallacious three precious gems and the truth of our pure selfless wishes, may the precious Buddha's teachings flourish and spread to the expanse of all areas throughout the length and breadth of the West. For all the people living there, together with their near ones, who have engaged in the teachings and have faith and respect for them, may all conditions adverse to their practice of pure Dharma be dispelled, and an excellent collection of favorable conditions increase like the waxing moon. And especially for those who work on methods to accomplish the flourishing and spreading of the victorious one's teachings, which are the source of benefit and happiness, may they never be oppressed by masses of interference and adverse conditions, and may this happen just as we wish. Thus have I heard once. The Blessed One was dwelling in the royal domain of the Ultra Peak Mountain, together with a big gathering of great monks and great bodhisattvas. At that time, the Blessed One entered the Samadhi, which examines the Dharma, called profound illumination. And at the same time, noble Avalokiteshvara, the Bodhisattva Mahasattva, looking at the profound practice of transcendent knowledge, saw the five skandhas in their natural emptiness. Then, through the inspiration of the Buddha, Venerable Shariputra said to Avalokiteshvara, "How should those noble ones learn who wish to follow the profound practice of transcendent knowledge?" And Avalokiteshvara answered, "Venerable Shariputra, whoever wishes to follow the profound practice of transcendent knowledge should look at it like this, seeing the five skandhas in their natural emptiness. Form is empty, emptiness itself is form. Emptiness is not separate from form. Form is not separate from emptiness. In the same way, feeling, discriminating awareness, compositional factors in consciousness are empty. Thus all the dharmas are empty and have no characteristics. They are unborn and unceasing. They are not impure or pure. They neither decrease nor increase. Therefore, since there is emptiness, there is no form, no feeling, no discriminating awareness, no compositional factors, no consciousness, no eye, no ear, no nose, no tongue, no body, no mind, no appearance, no sound, no smell, no taste, no sensation, no objects of mind, no quality of sight, no quality of hearing, no quality of smelling, no quality of tasting, no quality of sensing, no quality of thought, no quality of mind consciousness. There are no nidanas from ignorance to old age and death, nor their wearing out. There is no suffering, no cause of suffering, no ending of suffering, and no path, no wisdom, no non-attainment, Therefore, since there is no attainment, the bodhisattvas abide by means of transcendent knowledge. And since there is no obscurity of mind, they have no fear. They transcend falsity and pass beyond the bounds of sorrow. All the Buddhas who dwell in the past, present, and future, by means of transcendent knowledge, fully and clearly awaken to unsurpassed, true, complete enlightenment. And therefore, the mantra of transcendent knowledge, the mantra of deep insight, the unsurpassed mantra, the unequaled mantra, the mantra which calms all suffering, should be known as truth, for there is no deception. In transcendent knowledge, the mantra is proclaimed, Taryata Om Gati Gati Paragati Parasamgati Swaha. O Shariputra, this is how a Bodhisattva Mahasattva should learn profound transcendent knowledge. Then the Blessed One arose from that samadhi and praised the Bodhisattva Mahasattva Avalokiteshvara, saying, Good, good, O son of noble family, profound transcendent knowledge should be practiced just as you have taught, and the Tathagatas will rejoice. When the Blessed One had said this, Shariputra and Avalokiteshvara, that whole gathering in the world with its gods, humans, asuras, and Gandharvas, their hearts full of joy, praised the Lord. generating bodhicitta. With the mind, the wish to free all beings, I shall always go for refuge to the Buddha, Dharma, and Sangha until I reach full enlightenment. Inspired by wisdom and compassion, today in the Buddha's presence, I generate the mind intent on full awakening for the benefit of all sentient beings. As long as space endures, as long as sentient beings remain, until then may I too remain to dispel all miseries of the world. With a wish to free all beings, I shall always go for refuge to the Buddha, Dharma, and Sangha until I reach full enlightenment. Inspired by wisdom and compassion, today in the Buddha's presence, I generate the mind intent on full awakening for the benefit of all sentient beings. As long as space endures, as long as sentient beings remain, until then may I too remain to dispel the miseries of the world.
I shall always go for refuge
To the Buddha, Dharma, and Sangha until I reach full enlightenment. Inspired by wisdom and compassion, today in the Buddha's presence, I generate the mind intent on full awakening for the benefit of all sentient beings. As long as space endures, as long as sentient beings remain, until then may I too remain to dispel the miseries of the world. So here we began last night to discuss Beyond Religion, the book by His Holiness the Dalai Lama, where he introduces what he calls secular ethics. And so we will resume and continue tonight. Last night did we complete the introduction? I think so. Do you know? We completed the introduction.
I think so, but I'm not sure.
So to go over the points there, the fundamental problem, His Holiness says he believes, is that at every level we are giving too much attention to the external material aspects of life while neglecting moral ethics and inner values. And so we discussed the way in which we're living in a time when we all have not only do we pursue external material aspects of life, but we have access to them in a way that one has never had before. And we can actually, I think, taste the lack of satisfaction that comes from this material pursuit. I think that maybe the reason that we're here is out of a recognition of that. And so the moral ethics and inner values are the ones that His Holiness is addressing here. Inner values are... I'm here. You can hear me direct. So, but if you want me to repeat anything, I'll happily. Our inner lives are something we ignore at our own peril, and many of the greatest problems we face in today's world are the result of that neglect. Ultimately, the source of our problems lies at the level of the individual. I think this is very important. One of the, I think, most interesting aspects of the Buddhist path is that, or the Buddhist take on life, is that our our situation is the result of our own past actions, and it is the way we behave now in relation to or in respect to the situation we have created that determines the future. And so everything is on our shoulders. We have to assume responsibility for where we are, and we have to behave in a way that will enable us to experience a better future. All of that lies on our shoulders. And I think that, though I don't think that that is unique to Buddhism, I think that it is an attribute of Buddhism that I personally find particularly attractive, particularly poignant. So to go on, so long as people give priority to material values, then injustice, corruption, inequity, intolerance, and greed, all the outward manifestations of neglect of inner values, will persist. And so we have to cultivate our inner values. Today, however, any religion-based answer to problems of our neglect of inner values can never be universal, and so will be inadequate. And this is where His Holiness is really saying, given the fact that there are so many different religions that have their own take on the cause of our situation and how to deal with it, it's not that we can put the responsibility of our moral or ethical way on religion. It's something that, because that's really taking it away from the responsibility that we ourselves must assume. And he ends the chapter, the introduction, by saying, the reality of the world today is that grounding ethics in religion is no longer adequate. We must find a way that is beyond religion. Okay, so we will start part 1, a new vision of secular ethics. Good evening. How are you? So, there are chairs there.
I'm so sorry to.
Don't worry. Come in. Come in. So, to explain, we are beginning to study this book, Beyond Religion, by His Holiness the Dalai Lama, in which he explores the idea of establishing an ethical system, a system of ethics that is not religion-based. Oh, thank you. Gosh, I'm going to really get movement in my neck. Okay. All right. So, who? You're the only two with books? Okay. Okay. I'll be reading it. So, rethinking secularism, inner values in an age of science. I'm a man of religion, but religion alone cannot answer all our problems. Not long ago, I attended a formal ceremony to mark the opening of a new Buddhist temple in Bihar, a particularly densely populated and poor part of northern India. the chief minister of Bihar, an old friend of mine, made a fine speech in which he expressed his conviction that with the blessings of the Buddha, the state of Bihar would now prosper. When my turn came to speak, I suggested half jokingly that if Bihar's prosperity depended solely on the blessings of the Buddha, it really should have prospered long ago. After all, Bihar is home to the holiest site of the Buddhists, Bodh Gaya, where the historical Buddha attained full enlightenment. For real change, we require more than the blessings of the Buddha, powerful though they may be, and more than prayer. We also need action, which will only come about through the able efforts of the chief minister and others like him. So I have a vague memory of that time, in His Holiness told us at a teaching that the chief minister had said this, and His Holiness's response was, no, it's not due to the blessings of the Buddha, it's due to your hard work. And prayer has a wonderful effect on us. When people ask that we say prayers for them in the monastery, I always think, oh, that's awfully kind of them, but we're the ones who benefit, because when we pray, we are praying that others find happiness. We are praying that people find freedom from their suffering. We are generating in our own thoughts these virtuous thoughts, these virtuous attitudes that benefit us. I don't know how much they benefit the people we're praying for. To be honest, we have collected a lot of money because people believe that these our prayers are of benefit to them. But there is, now I mentioned money. It's an interesting thing that the karmic link between the person who is requesting prayers and the monks who are praying is established by the engagement in generosity by the person, the giver. In other words, due to the fact that so and so gives me $1, there is a link established between that person and me. And so whatever good thoughts I may engage in as a result of that that gift, that act of generosity, is linked to the person who gave. So that's I suppose that one would say that that's sort of the subtle workings of karma, of cause and effect. But the person who really benefits from good thoughts is the person who's generating the good thoughts. So this is not to suggest that blessings and prayers are useless. In fact, I consider prayers to be of immense psychological benefit. So immense psychological benefit suggests that it is of benefit to the person who is engaging in the prayers, whose psychology is being affected by the thoughts of the prayer. But we must accept that its tangible results are often hard to see. When it comes to obtaining certain direct results, it is clear that prayer cannot match the achievements of, for instance, modern science. When I was ill some years ago, it was certainly comforting to know that people were praying for me, but it was, I must admit, still more comforting to know that the hospital where I was being treated had the very latest equipment to deal with my condition. Now, I think this is really, it's rather radical, but I think it's really important. In light of our growing mastery over so many aspects of the physical world in the past 200 years or so, it is not surprising that many people today question whether we have any need for religion at all. Things that in the past were only dreamt about, the elimination of diseases, space travel, computers, have become reality through science. So it is not surprising that many have come to place all their hopes in science, and even to believe that happiness can be achieved by means of what material science can deliver. But while I can understand how science has undermined faith in some aspects of traditional religion, I see no reason why advances in science should have the same effect on the notion of inner or spiritual values. Indeed, the need for inner values is more pressing in this age of science than ever before. So I think we should pray for the cat. See if that helps.
Maybe he's praying for us.
I think he's desperately praying to go out. In the attempt to make a compelling case for the inner values and the ethical living in an age of science, it would be ideal to make the case in wholly scientific terms. Although it is not yet possible to do so purely on the basis of scientific research, I'm confident that as time goes on, a more and more secure scientific case for the benefits of inner ethical values will gradually emerge. So there are these scientists. The one that is usually mentioned is Dr. Richard Davidson at the University of Wisconsin in Madison, who he's a neuroscientist, and he has measured the effects of virtuous thoughts on the brain, and has seen that if we, let's say, work at developing thoughts of compassion, thoughts of love towards others, thoughts of the beneficial thoughts, that these things have an effect on the brain itself, and also have an effect on the happiness of the well-being of the person who's cultivating these thoughts. Again, I want to emphasize that I'm not sure how much of a benefit they may have on the world around them immediately, but they do benefit the individual. And this is why I was saying last night, the cultivation of secular ethics is not a concept. It's not an outer thing. It's not that one is trying to establish a secular ethics curriculum, or the important thing is not the system. The important thing is the application of it to ourselves. The important thing is our own practice. The only way in which this concept of ethics and the cultivation of ethics has any meaning at all is as a result of our own putting it to practice. And that, we come to the Tibet Center here. The whole purpose for doing so, for coming here, for thinking about these things, is to bring about changes within ourselves. And the secular ethics that His Holiness is talking about here is emphasizing the importance of working at making changes individually within ourselves. And though I sort of jokingly said that I wasn't sure how much effect that would have on the outside world, that it affects me, but not necessarily the world around me, I'm not sure that that's really true. I think that the greatest benefit that we can bring to the world, the greatest effect that we can have on the world, is as a result of the work that we do on ourselves. I don't think we can have any greater effect. And so if we approach the cultivation of secular ethics, of the cultivation of virtue within ourselves properly, it does affect the world around us. It does affect people around us. And we know that from being around someone who has a bad temper and being around someone who is pleasant and happy. The happy person who has cultivated that happiness makes the world around them a happier place. The angry person definitely makes the world around them a less happy place. Okay. Of course, I'm no scientist, and modern science was not a part of my formal education as a child. However, since coming into exile, I've done a lot of catching up. For more than 30 years now, I've held regular meetings with experts and researchers from many scientific fields, including physics, cosmology, biology, psychology, and especially of late, neuroscience. Contemplative traditions in all religions place great emphasis on exploring the inner world of experience and consciousness. So, one of my aims in these discussions has been to explore the scientific understanding of areas such as thought, emotion, and subjective experience. I'm very encouraged by the fact that science, and particularly neuroscience, is now increasingly paying attention to these matters, which have been neglected for so long. And I'm pleased by recent developments in scientific methodology in these areas, in which the traditional scientific principle of objective third person verifiability is now being expanded to include the domain of subjective experience. An example of this is the work of neurophenomenology by my late friend Francisco Varela. I have also had a long-standing interest in what scientific basis might be found in understanding the effects of contemplative practice in the deliberate cultivation of qualities such as compassion, loving kindness, attention, and a calm mind. I've always felt that if science could show such practices to be both possible and beneficial, then perhaps they could even be promoted through mainstream education. Fortunately, there is now a reasonably substantial body of evidence in evolutionary biology, neuroscience, and other fields suggesting that even from the most rigorous scientific perspective, unselfishness and concern for others are not only in our own interest, but also, in a sense, innate to our biological nature. Now, that's interesting. It's interesting because it contradicts the notion that we are basically selfish. And it's suggesting that at some level, at some deep level, there is a natural quality that we possess of concern for others. And I've heard the experiments where little children view an act of kindness as opposed to an act of meanness, and the children gravitate towards the kindness. If they're asked to choose which they make them happier, it's the act of kindness. And this, scientists have suggested, is these are very, very, very young children who haven't really gotten to a point where they've been taught or where they have a what? Where they have real control over this. It's at an age when what they're experiencing is more intuitive and more natural. So such evidence, when combined with reflection on our personal experiences and coupled with simple common sense, can, I believe, offer a strong case for the benefits of cultivating basic human values that does not rely on religious principles or faith at all. And this I welcome. So, if these are qualities that are innate, these are a tendency towards a compassionate or loving attitude is sort of part of our human nature, then the cultivation of that or the working at developing that would not be necessarily religious based. It would be a natural quality that one was naturally working at enhancing. Approaching secularism. This, then, is the basis of what I call secular ethics. I'm aware that for some people, and particularly for some Christian and Muslim brothers and sisters, my use of the word secular raises difficulties. To some, the very word suggests a firm rejection of, or even hostility towards religion. It may seem to them that in using this word, I'm advocating the exclusion of religion from ethical systems, or even from all areas of public life. This is not at all what I have in mind. Instead, my understanding of the word secular comes from the way it is commonly used in India. Modern India has a secular constitution and prides itself on being a secular country. In India, in Indian usage, secular, far from implying antagonism towards religion or toward people of faith, actually implies a profound respect for and tolerance towards all religions. It also implies an inclusive and impartial attitude, which includes non-believers. This understanding of the term secular to imply mutual tolerance and respect for all faiths, as well as for those of no faith, comes from India's particular historical and cultural background. In the same way, I suspect the Western understanding of the term comes from European history. I'm no historian and certainly no expert on the subject, but it seems to me that as science began to advance rapidly in Europe, there was a move towards greater rationality. And this rationality involved, among other things, a rejection of what came to be seen as superstition of the past, superstitions of the past. For many radical thinkers from that time to our own day, the adoption of rationality has entailed a rejection of religious faith. The French Revolution, which expressed so many of the new ideas of European Enlightenment, is a good example of this, with its strong anti-religious element. Of course, there was also an important social dimension to this rejection. Religion came to be regarded as conservative, tied to tradition, and closely associated with old regimes and all their failings. The legacy of this history, it seems, is that for more than 200 years, many of the most influential thinkers and reformers in the West have viewed religion not as an avenue to human liberation, but as an obstacle to progress. Marxism, one of the most powerful secular ideologies of the 20th century, even denounced religion as the opium of the people, with tragic consequences as communist regimes forcibly suppressed religion in many parts of the world. If anyone has a comment, if anyone would like to say something, please feel free to. These are sort of powerful concepts that His Holiness is presenting. It is a result of this history, I feel, that in the West, the idea of secularism is so often understood as being antagonistic toward religion. Secularism and religion are often seen as two opposing and mutually incompatible positions, and there is considerable suspicion and hostility between the followers of the two camps. I really have nothing to add. Yeah, Mr. Spina,
Yes.
you're
No, it depends on the level that people think, people defending their religion, of course, you're gonna have hostility toward any idea of secularism.
so again, secularism includes the religions,
Yes.
all religious traditions. And when His Holiness mentions India, India is a place that has had religious traditions that go from the theistic to the atheistic, and so religion itself encompasses such a variety of philosophies, as well as non-belief or a belief in nothing. Though there are ancient Indian religions that suggest a belief in nothing.
And they still call the holder that rishi. His Holiness always,
Yes.
even though they disagree totally, they still address the
They
person.
are respected. They
Yeah.
are. This understanding of the term secular to imply mutual tolerance and respect for all faiths, as well as for those of no faith, comes from India's particular historical and cultural background. In the same way, have I read this already? Yeah, I think I have.
I think you're at while I cannot accept the suggestion.
It is a result of this history, I feel, that in the West, the idea of secularism is so often understood as being antagonistic towards religion. Secularism and religion are often seen as two opposing and mutually incompatible positions, and there is considerable suspicion and hostility between the followers of the two camps. While I cannot accept the suggestion that religion is an obstacle to human development, I do feel that in the context of history, anti-religious sentiments may be understandable.
Like today.
History teaches the uncomfortable truth that religious institutions and adherents of every denomination have been involved in exploitation of others at some stage or another. Religion has also been used as a pretext for conflict and oppression. Even Buddhism, with its doctrine of nonviolence, cannot escape this charge entirely. So when negative attitudes towards religion in the West or elsewhere are motivated by a concern for justice, they must be respected. In fact, one could argue that those who point out the hypocrisy of religious people who violate the ethical principles they proclaim and who stand up against injustices perpetrated by religious figures and institutions are actually strengthening and benefiting the traditions themselves. However, when assessing such criticisms, it's important to distinguish between criticisms directed at religion itself and those directed at institutions of religion, which are two quite separate things. So, to my mind, notions of social justice are in no way contrary to the principles espoused by religion itself, because close to the heart of all great faith traditions is the aim of promoting humanity's most positive qualities and nurturing such values as kindness, compassion, forgiveness, patience, and personal integrity. I think that's worth repeating. To my mind, notions of social justice are in no way contrary to the principles espoused by religion itself, because close to the heart of all great faith traditions is the aim of promoting humanity's most positive qualities and nurturing such values as kindness, compassion, forgiveness, patience, and personal integrity. So secularism in India. For me, then, the word secular holds no fear. Instead, I am mindful of the founders of India's secular constitution, such as Dr. B.R. Ambedkar and Dr. Rajendra Prasad, the latter of whom I had the honor to know personally. Their intention in promoting secularism was not to do away with religion, but rather to recognize formally the religious diversity of Indian society. Mahatma Gandhi, the inspiration behind the Constitution, was himself a deeply religious man. In his daily prayer meetings, he included readings and hymns from all the country's major faith traditions. This remarkable example is followed in Indian public ceremonies to this day. The kind of religious tolerance Gandhi personified is nothing new in India. It has ancient roots stretching back more than 2,000 years. It is revealed, for example, on inscribed pillars dating from the reign of the Emperor Ashoka in the 3rd century BCE. One inscription contains the exhortation to honor another's religion, for doing so strengthens both one's own and that of the other. Furthermore, Sanskrit literature reveals a classical culture that was intellectually tolerant and rich in debate. In India, many philosophical positions have been subjects of great discussion since ancient times. Even positions that look much like modern materialism and atheism have an honorable and respected history in Indian tradition. Classical philosophical texts contain many references to the Charvaka school, whose adherents rejected any idea of God and the existence of any soul or afterlife. Other thinkers often vigorously oppose the Charvaka views as nihilistic, but their radical materialism was nevertheless taken seriously as a philosophical position, and their founder was eternally referred to as a rishi or sage. Proponents of the Charvaka ideas were also accorded a certain level of recognition and respect by some Indian rulers, many of whom were outstandingly tolerant of other religious faiths. The Muslim Emperor Akbar, who held dialogues with Hindus, Christians, and others, is one example of this tradition. So, the most important of the great Indian monastic institutions Nalanda. Uh, Apparently, before Nalanda was actually established as a monastery and a center for learning, it was the place itself was somehow naturally attracted people with different ideas of truth, uh, who would come together and discuss and debate. And so the tradition of debate predates the we have in our monasteries the, the tradition of debate. It's we spend many hours a day engaged in debate, scrutinizing what we've been taught, coming to understand it in a more subtle way. We're not simply told this is the way things are. We are told to figure out how things are, come to understand a subject in a more subtle way, in a more exploring the more um, uh, the different facets of a particular view. And in the process, you form your own understanding. And your own understanding is if you have established that something is so, and if you have scrutinized, if you've applied scrutiny to it, and come to see it in such a way that it actually is clearly correct to you, you'll have faith in that. And the faith that you have in that will be unshakable. Uh, that is what is called faith based on reason, faith, intelligent faith. It's the kind of faith that you can really bank on. And so Nalanda was this place, or where Nalanda was then established in Rajgir, um, in the same state of Bihar that His Holiness referred to earlier, um, uh, became the most important monastic university. And actually, it had 4 gates, and at each gate was a gatekeeper who was not someone standing there with a sword, but a great debater. And the idea was that if anyone could come in and challenge the gatekeeper and win the debate, in other words, by logical means, establish his or her own view to be superior to that of the gatekeeper, that person could proceed into the monastery and take over the monastery. Because if you're really pursuing truth, then you would have to follow the view that um, proved itself to be the more correct understanding of truth. So this place in Nalanda, even before the establishment of the monastery, was a place in which truth was being um, uh, pursued, and there was this intellectual openness, a willingness to explore and and scrutinize. So some time ago, I had an illuminating discussion on this subject with the former Deputy Prime Minister of India, Mr. L.K. Advani. He suggested that India's long-standing culture of tolerance, diversity, and debate is precisely what explains its marked success in maintaining a secular democracy. I'm sure he is right. Today, the majority in India are Hindus, but many other religions are also well represented. India is home to the second largest Muslim population in the world, a fact not appreciated by many in the West. And there's also there are also many millions of Sikhs and Christians, as well as substantial Jain, Buddhist, Zoroastrian, and Jewish communities. In fact, the ethnic and religious minorities in India are almost too numerous to mention. In addition, hundreds of different languages are spoken in the country today. Amid this tremendous human diversity, it is a relatively common sight to see Hindu temples and Muslim minarets standing next to one another on city streets. In fact, most villages have more than one religion represented among their populations. I recently met a man from Romania who, for a research project, had visited numerous Indian villages. In telling me about a largely Muslim village in Rajasthan, in which there were only 3 Hindu families, he expressed surprise that these families lived there with no sense of fear or apprehension. His surprise, I thought, must be a result of the Western media's misleading portrayal of India's communal relations. There have been some severe and deeply regrettable incidences of communal violence in India, but it is a mistake to generalize these across the entire subcontinent. Notwithstanding such isolated incidents, India, by and large, maintains, despite its great diversity, a peaceful and harmonious society. Clearly, the ancient Indian doctrine of ahimsa, or nonviolence, has flourished and been adopted as a principle of peaceful coexistence by all faiths. This is a tremendous achievement and one from which other countries in the world can learn. I don't know, maybe we'll stop here, and if anyone has anything to say or comment to make, I want to throw in, His Holiness has just mentioned ahimsa, non-violence, and His Holiness has described non-violence as not simply refraining from violence, but engaging in the attitude of maintaining nonviolence. In other words, it should be a constructive, positive effort, and that in itself is a secular ethical practice. You don't create a society of nonviolence by simply talking about the concept of nonviolence. It's something that really has to be lived and acted upon. And Gandhi really engaged in it as a virtually as a religion. It was his religion, and it was an active religion. It was not, as I say, a passive one. So, does anyone have something to?
I'm just thinking about it in terms of us and them, we and them, the way I grew up. My parents, raising kids, and they were young, Catholics and all, but I watched the ecumenical council and things change and people just kind of drift away. But then there was a negativity in there that I saw pretty consistently. So it was probably always there.
A negativity of what sort?
For instance, the secular against the religious, different thought. My parents could never really understand them. They could never really explain it to us as children. Why we had neighbors that were atheists, that type of stuff.
And intolerance and fear of the one that's different, that kind of stuff. Intolerance.
Yeah.
And fear of the one, that's
Yeah.
That's healthy. The way we all grew up. I feel very comfortable with that.
By not embracing any of it, I think I became more tolerant of it.
I want to ask you about India today, but we'll do it offline.
Okay.
Because you have to go back there.
So, but in respect to what you have just said, your use of the word secular reflected the idea that it is non-religious.
Right.
And His Holiness is really emphasizing the fact that secular has to include.
In my world, it didn't.
I think most people would have a take on it, on that meaning, the old meanings. We have to really educate a new meaning of the word secular. He's doing it here, but we have to emphasize a little more. I guess.
I feel like I'm struck by, at least for my own generation, and maybe younger, it does feel like there is a temperament of rejection to religion in some ways, at least that I have witnessed at different times, and that it feels like there is some kind of precedent set maybe for young people right now in the air that feels like if something represents any kind of attack, then it is completely shut away. Maybe whether it's, Catholicism maybe represented something like, a ban on reproductive rights or gender politics, etc. It feels like looking for the bad instead of looking for the good, maybe in that faith. And it feels difficult because it really starts to draw a line where everyone starts to separate really intensely. And I suppose it feels applied to most things. But it's interesting in hearing His Holiness say that the church rather than the religion, that struck me in terms of thinking about not trying to find, or I suppose you'll probably always find problems in institutions, but in just faith, seems pretty clean. But I think institutions, they start to represent problematic things to, at times they've represented problematic things to myself. I can speak for myself in that way. But to look at people or in faith rather than institutions seems healthy, I suppose.
We always said religion's in the mind, not in the temple.
Right.
Question. In this book, when His Holiness uses the word religion, what does he mean? Does he mean like established religious traditions or something else?
I think he means established religious traditions. So, we will read the Sutra of the Recollection of the Noble Three Jewels. Is there anyone that we've been...
Dickie Betts, I think we missed him.
Who?
Dickie Betts, you're out of my generation. He's a guitar
Dickie
player.
Betts.
Richard mentioned it.
I prostrate to the Omniscient One. Thus the Buddha, Bhagavat, Buddha, the learned and virtuous one, the Sugata, the knower of the world, the charioteer and tamer of beings, the unsurpassable one, the teacher of devas and humans, is the Buddha Bhagavat. The Tathagata is in accord with all merit. He does not waste the roots of virtue. He is completely ornamented with all patience. He is the basis of the treasures of merit. He is adorned with the minor marks. He blossoms with the flowers of the major marks. His activity is timely and appropriate. Seeing him is without disharmony. He brings true joy to those who long with faith. His knowledge cannot be overpowered. His strength cannot be challenged. He is the teacher of all sentient beings. He is the father of bodhisattvas. He is the king of noble ones. He is the guide of those who journey to the city of nirvana. He possesses immeasurable wisdom. He possesses inconceivable confidence. His speech is completely pure. His melody is pleasing. One never has enough of seeing him. His form is incomparable. He is not stained by the realm of desire. He is not stained by the realm of form. He is not affected by the formless realm. He is completely and utterly liberated from the skandhas. He is not possessed with dhatus. His ayatanas are controlled. He has completely cut the knots. He's completely liberated from extreme torment. He's liberated from craving. He's crossed over the river. He's perfected in all the wisdoms. He abides in the wisdom of the Buddha Bhagavat, who arises in past, present, and future. He does not abide in nirvana. He abides in the ultimate perfection. He dwells on the bhumi where he sees all sentient beings. All these are the perfect virtues of the greatness of the Buddha Bhagavat. The holy Dharma is good in the middle and good at the end. Its meaning is excellent. Its words are excellent. It is uncorrupted. It is completely pure. It completely purifies. The Bhagavat teaches the Dharma well. It brings complete vision. It is free from sickness. It is always timely. It directs one further. Seeing it fulfills one's purpose. It brings discriminating insight. The Dharma which is taught by the Bhagavat is revealed properly in the Vinaya. It is renunciation. It causes one to arrive at perfect enlightenment. It is without contradiction. It is pithy. It is trustworthy and puts an end to the journey. As for the Sangha of the great Yana, they enter completely, they enter insightfully, they enter straightforwardly, they enter harmoniously. They are worthy of veneration with joined palms. They are worthy of receiving prostration. They are a field of glorious merit. They are completely capable of receiving all gifts. They are an object of generosity. They are a great object of complete generosity. The protector who possesses great kindness, the omniscient teacher, the basis of oceans of merit and virtue, I prostrate to the Tathagata. Pure, the cause of freedom from passion, virtuous, liberating from the lower realms. This alone is the supreme ultimate truth. I prostrate to the Dharma, which is peace. Having been liberated, they show the path to liberation. They are fully dedicated to the disciplines. They are a holy field of merit and possess virtue. I prostrate to the Sangha. I prostrate to the Buddha, the leader. I prostrate to the Dharma, the protector. I prostrate to the Sangha, the community. I prostrate respectfully and always to these three. The Buddha's virtues are inconceivable. The Dharma's virtues are inconceivable. The Sangha's virtues are inconceivable. Having faith in these inconceivables, therefore, intuitions are inconceivable. May they be born in a completely pure mind. So may we read a prayer for a swift return for.
Is it in here again?
Yes.
Oh, we took it out.
Exalted wisdom of all victors gathered in a drop, sole refuge manifest in the form of one wearing saffron robes, Guru Lobsang Tugwang Dorje. Please bear witness here today that our prayers may be fulfilled. We beseech the great torch of doctrine, accomplishing from long ago the vast waves of aspirational prayers, Lord of speech of the victor Lobsang's teachings, spreading them to the ends of the earth by means of explanation and practice. Though holding the commitment, I will invite all beings to be my guests in unsurpassed great awakening. Yet you have withdrawn the activities of the form body that serves the welfare of others. Is that worthy of the supreme among beings, the Bodhisattvas? Though impossible for you till cyclic existence ends, to abandon your commitment to liberate all beings, we beseech the new son of Nirmanakaya to swiftly return from the realm of Dharmakaya, brought forth by Bodhicitta, drawn by seven steeds. Having reached the far limits of scholarship, religious life, and goodness, please come swiftly as an unrivaled supreme emanation, full holder of the sage's teachings, and wish-fulfilling jewel. Return as the glory of Losang Tempe.
Magnificent truth of the three precious jewels,
Mahakala, Kamayana, and Shraddha, and the ocean of Dharma protectors, may you spontaneously fulfill our wishes with the swift blossoming of the reincarnation of fresh moonlight faith. Thank you.